Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome on into today's FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. We are checking in with Mary O'Connell, host and writer of our Check Call show and newsletter. Mary, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday.
You guys know that after all this time, there's no better way to start a Tuesday morning.
So we've got Check Call coming up this afternoon, and we're going to dive into a little bit of a preview on the episode, one that you yourself has called chaotic. And I agree because it's coming from Thomas Wasson, our enterprise trucking expert. And we're in a bit of communities crossover with this, right? He hosts Loaded and Rolling, all about our enterprise fleets. You host Check Call, which is for the 3PLs. And of course, they are interconnected in many, many ways. So of course, the crossover is necessary. You guys have a lot of hot takes going on here. Give us a little bit of an overview about the episode and why people might need to prepare for it.
It's a good episode. So really, we take this time because there's been a lot of headlines coming out lately that are very topical and very timely. So we really take this time to kind of break it down and say, okay, well, how are enterprise carriers looking at it? And then how is this important? Why should 3PLs and freight brokers kind of care about this kind of news? And, we kind of touch on everything from, where the market will come back to, what's going to happen with some major carriers. And then also, most importantly, though, we do kind of focus in on bid season and kind of the role that technology plays in it, and really just kind of how those companies, like both carriers and 3PLs and freight brokers that are leaning into the technological evolution and kind of, updating themselves with the modern times, how they stand to gain so much more in the coming months and years.
So you guys go through like 3 or 4 of those headlines in the episode. And I'm going to flip it on the script and I'm going to ask you your opinions about these headlines as well. Because I don't know if you feel like I do, where you get trapped into this, like, I'm the interviewer. Nobody ever talks to me about what I think about the topics. So we're going to go ahead and do that for this community spotlight. We're going to start off with news from Flexport because, of course, last year brought the unfortunate news of Convoy and the wind down of their operations, the closure of their business, and the uncertainty about their future. Flexport's given them a second lease on life now, relaunching their platform and deciding to take that technology, which was great and proprietary, and put it into their offering as global freight forwarder. What are your thoughts on this and the new direction for the second lease on life, really, for Convoy's platform?
I love it because it's never a good day when you see someone file for bankruptcy or have to close their business. That's never something that anyone ever wants to do. Like I personally would never wake up in the morning and be like, let's go close a business today. But that being said, I think it's great that they were able to kind of make the best of a bad situation. And, Convoy had enough money from that sale to kind of pay off some of the issue or some of the, creditors that they owed. And so that way they kind of got to wrap everything nicely up with a bow, but the legacy still lived on in Flexport's technology. And Flexport has, made quite a name for themselves. So I think it's great that they were able to take kind of a solution that they could just automatically put in to make work in their everyday kind of life. And I think it's great. I love that anyone gets a repurpose on life, not just because it makes the upcycling part of me happy, but I think it's fantastic that they were able to utilize that so effectively and so quickly, because for them to kind of acquire the software, understand how it works, get it to, fit within their workflows, and then roll it out in such a short time span. It's truly a testament to how creative they are over there.
So Flexport's CEO, Ryan Peterson, has never been one to shy away from announcing his true opinions about these kinds of things. And he actually got to be in the spotlight with Tim Dooner on yesterday's episode of What the Truck. So if you missed it, and I'm sure that they dug a little bit into this topic, go back onto YouTube, watch What the Truck from your Monday, and get a little bit educated with Ryan Peterson about this topic. Let's move on to number 2 of the day, talking about trucking bid cycles. And you mentioned that you and Thomas both go into this one. And there's a little bit of uncertainty, maybe even some trepidation of these larger carriers going into bid cycles as you're headed into the start, I guess kind of the end of the first quarter now. What does bid season look like for us this year? And how much has that changed versus what we've been used to over the last kind of 3 to 4 years?
So that truckload bid season is definitely, that's something that we really spent a decent amount of time on, because it's something that's very relevant to everyone, because shippers, obviously, we have a we have a great market for shippers, as in rates are low. It's going to be a cost-effective time to ship things. Shippers are trying to lock in those year-long contract rates now when the market is low and everything is great. They want to lock in those low rates because obviously, we want to know what we're spending on our transportation spend for the year. And if I can lock it in low, that's great. And that gives me a lot of cushion for the end of the year. However, carriers are really hedging that there's going to be a big change and that, the flip is going to happen in the second half of the year. So a lot of carriers aren't necessarily chomping at the bit to be locked into less than desirable rates for an entire year. So there's a lot of pushback of, okay, well, instead of doing a year-long bid, what about a 6-month bid? What about a 3-month bid? Maybe, revisit it every quarter as market conditions tend to change. And I think that that is where the freight broker and the 3PL really come in and say, okay, well, that's where they have to really come in and be that middleman and kind of appeal to everybody and say, okay, well, we can't keep to the shippers, we can't keep the rates super low for the whole year because that's not fair to the carriers who, are maybe struggling to trying to profit on some loads. And then on the carrier side, well, you can't just demand that this shipper does 3-month bid cycles so that way it's more favorable for your business. That's where that freight broker and 3PL really need to find that middle ground and say, okay, this is what both people can come to the table with, and we can surely find an agreement, because you don't want your shipper to be put in a bad spot, but also you don't want to do anything to those carriers that have been there for you and helped you out during the hot market that was 2020 and 2021. And then also that you've been building these relationships with for the past few years, because that's really going to be where, the future and kind of, that success will be, is working both of those parties together.
So I think that feeds perfectly into the last topic of discussion that you guys hit on, and that's the last week's State of Freight webinar with our founder and CEO, Craig Fuller, and our head of freight market intelligence, Zach Strickland. They sit down and they do this webinar every single month, and it gives some really high-level insights into the current state of the market. And coming out of last week's webinar, really the overarching topic is we still don't know what's going to happen in 2024. People are expecting to be a little bit more optimistic, and they're starting to feel that that optimism is well placed. But is that kind of the general vibe that you guys are getting out of that as well?
Everyone is asking everyone, when do they think that the market will turn? It's like, if you have a crystal ball into the world of supply chain, you could make $1 trillion off of it right now. But that being said, everyone's just kind of making a best educated guess. Myself personally, I've got money on right after the 4th of July, things will start to turn and we'll start to see a slow uptick in rates. But, we won't necessarily see anything like we did in 2020 or 2021. I think we'll just see kind of like a normal kind of situation. I don't even know what normal is anymore, but it won't be bad, but it won't be like, printing your own money. So I think that'll happen towards the end of summer, but there are also, Zach and Craig got really into that. At the State of Freight, which I highly recommend everyone go watch, because it's you always learn something and it's fantastic. But yeah, I think I personally am saying that after the summer, I think the 4th of July is going to be a nice catalyst for it. A lot of people are saying Q4 or even so far as into Q1 of next year. So honestly, at this point, it's everybody's best guess. It's just a matter to see kind of what happens. It's always hard to predict things on an election year. So it's just kind of a matter of, let's wait and see what happens in the world, which unfortunately is not the answer that anyone can plan their budgets around.
And there you go. So to wrap up this community spotlight, we have now plugged 3 separate things. What the Truck Monday with Ryan Peterson, Loaded and Rolling with Thomas Wasson, which will air later on today. You can find that episode live. And then State of Freight webinar from last week with Craig Fuller and Zach Strickland. Let's finish it out by plugging your show, Choose Call. The full show comes out today, 12:30. Where can people go to find it?
Well, in case you haven't caught up on all of your FreightWaves content, just keep watching on YouTube, 12:30 today. And if you're scared you're going to miss it, subscribe to FreightWaves and hit the little notification bell so you get notified whenever we have a new show on any of our shows. But yeah, just keep it out there or anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
There you go, Mary. Thanks for that. And we will see you on the internet later today.
Thanks, guys.